Yo, what's up, everyone? So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. This is going to be a real treat for you all. So, I am interviewing Marcus Chan, who is this amazing influencer. So, I'm excited for you guys to all meet him. I mean, his last video did pretty well, so it seems like you guys like his content. But so yeah, um, oh, my microphone just changed. Uh-oh, hold up. Let me plug in. Hopefully people are able to make it. I know 1 o'clock on a Monday can be tough, but let me just make sure this is good. Ah, nice. You guys note taker here too. There you go. Hey, all right, there you go. Let's do this. Hey, turn off my text messages. Good to go.
All right, cool. Oh, you can kick out my AI note taker, by the way.
Oh, no, that's fine. Do you like use? No, like if you like it. Actually, if you have it, like, because you know how afterwards you can send me the notes, like that's cool too.
Yeah, that's fine. That sounds good.
Okay,
That sounds good.
sweet,
All right.
sweet man. I'm excited to. Yeah, I know 1 o'clock is a little bit weird, but I think some people are joining. So
It's all good,
yeah,
man. We'll have fun regardless. It's totally
yeah. I think this a lot of people are like, send me the recording afterwards. I have some people that are gonna be on flights, and so yeah, this will be good. And I think Adam just joined us. What's up,
Hi,
Adam?
Davidson. How's it going?
Hey, what's good, brother?
Not
So,
much, not much.
so Adam was my SDR when I was at Coach Hub. So he was my right hand man. It's a good dude.
awesome. I love it. Full circle.
Yeah. All right. So I'll just start recording then. Okay. Awesome. So Marcus has been a regular on the podcast now 3 times. So you're definitely probably the most interviewed guest that I've had actually, because you're just so super inspiring. So just for folks who don't, most people know you, but for folks who don't know who Marcus is, he's the president and founder of Venly Consulting Group. And you've been featured on the Wall Street Journal, Market Watch. You're a LinkedIn top voice, which I know that's highly coveted. You have 78,000 followers, so you're doing something right in terms of adding value to the sales world. And you're also an advisor at Limelight and author of The Six-Figure Sales Secret, which is a Wall Street Journal best-selling book. And you also volunteer with the Children's Cancer Association and Oregon Food Bank. And yeah, it seems like you have pretty good time management to be able to do all of that.
Well, it's a lot, I think it's as I've gotten older, it gets more challenging, right? Other responsibilities, kids, life, etc. But I think at the end of the day, it's your life is what you design, so you got to design the life you actually want.
Yeah, so I definitely want to dig into that because I think your level of productivity is probably one of the highest, right? I mean, I know Ian's pretty high up there, but I would say you probably are even, I mean, it's not good to compare, but I think you both are like up there in terms of the upper echelons of productivity. So we'll dig into that a bit more. And oh, did you want to have other people show their videos, or would you prefer?
I'm waiting for what this is your show. I'm just here for the
Okay.
ride.
Yeah. Adam, Sebastian, if you want to show video, you guys can also ask questions as well. So, how I envision this is maybe I'll ask you 20, maybe 20 minutes worth of questions, and then we'll leave it to Q&A because I'm sure they'll have a lot of questions for you.
Would it be a problem if I kept my video off? I'm happy to be engaged
Oh,
vocally,
okay.
just not sure I can do video right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Okay. Just making
Yeah,
sure.
Five questions. Don't worry.
like making
Okay.
lunch. I'm
Oh,
making
Sebastian, you were saying
uh,
something?
I'm like making lunch and about to eat, so
Okay.
that's why. But great to
No
have you.
worries.
Marcus.
Okay.
Very much.
Perfect. What are you eating for lunch?
I said enjoy your lunch.
Oh. Okay. Got it. So, I think what was really inspiring, oh, Sean just joined us as well. What was really inspiring was you shared about how you're able to design a life that is catered around supporting your family. So even though you're super productive, you're still able to have a lot, like your family is clearly your number one focus. And most people would think like, how's that possible if someone of that, but you built the groundwork, right? So it wasn't like this happened overnight. So would you share a little bit more about like you're able to do that?
Sure. And I think a lot of times, people see today is obviously very different than when I got started in B2B sales. And I think what's interesting is like I think we all go through seasons in our life depending on what's going on in our life. So I remember when I first got started in B2B sales, and I was 21 years old, and that was a very different season for me in life, right? So meaning like, I was in a serious relationship, but I wasn't engaged, I wasn't married. I had a lot more friends back then for sure. I didn't have any kid, right? So like my responsibility was actually relatively low. And that season at the time was definitely focused on like learning and growing and becoming the best version of me. So like at the time, what was most important to me was like, well, number one, I wanted to be really good at my job. I wanted to just excel. I want to have a career at that point. I didn't really know what my career was going to turn out to be like. Like, so focusing energy on my career is really important. I had a pretty serious girlfriend, so I wanted to make that obviously something more serious to get engaged and get married. And then, and my friends and my family. That's kind of what it was. So it was relatively simple. So especially early on, that's what I focused on. Now, I would say, especially in that first year, it was not well balanced
Mm, mm,
because I was in that season of like learning and growing and fear of failure. So I spent probably way more time in the working focus, especially my first year. So literally, it's like I'd wake up early, 5 in the morning, and I'd be thinking about work and trying to improve my job, do great at my job until, I got down around 5-ish, and then I go work out because it's important to me and I want to miss in the traffic. And then I get home. And then at that time, I'm going to hang out with my friends, or, my girlfriend's coming over, or we're going to go do something, or I was really practicing in role-playing sales. So
mm,
it was, especially in the first year, that season of like learning was just completely different. Now,
mm,
I'll tell you right now, especially the first several years, the level of design wasn't as intentional. But your priorities start shifting a little bit. And I remember fast forward a couple of years, and I was starting to have success in sales, leading a small team, and I wanted to also further my education. So I was still working like 60 plus hours a week, but I'm like, I want to get my MBA. So again, seasons changed, right? So now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get my MBA at night, which means it's going to cut into partying, going out, which I just party a lot. It's going to cut into hanging out with friends. It's going to cut into hanging out with my girlfriend. It's going to cut into a lot of things. So like my life again shifted again. So my schedule completely shifted again. Right now, granted, I also wasn't working 80 to 100 hours a week anymore because I was obviously better at my job, but it starts shifting over time, right? And then what was interesting as I kind of go through my career, at each level, I'll level up to managing more people or doing more things. I would actually start eliminating more things out of my life. So what I found was I actually had become a master at just cutting out things that didn't serve me. And I didn't really notice it at first, but like even when I was like getting my MBA, it was like, okay, I only have so many hours in the day. So either I can like keep going and partying and do terrible at school, do terrible with my day job, or I can cut out partying, or at least restrict it to just weekends.
mm,
So like just by like what's called Parkinson's law, work conforms to the time you give it. That's what was happening.
mm,
So now I had like, okay, I'm like, okay, I have 4 hours now. I got to study and do homework. I can only do homework now.
mm,
I have only 45 minutes to workout. I have to do my workout in that time because of the constraints I was creating as a result. Now, I didn't realize over time, as I progressed in my career, progressed in my life, that really served me because then eventually got to the point where, I was 31 and I had a pretty big sales org at the time. I had 85 employees, way more responsibilities. So I had to get really good at managing my time and really good at managing my energy. And by doing so, like, you start eliminating things that don't serve you. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, I kind of mentioned this when we spoke a few weeks back. I'm like, well, what I used to do, and again, nothing wrong if you do this, but I used to party and drink really heavy, I'd black out, and then I'd basically be useless the next day. you
mm,
know, and if we all the same amount of time, in a week, well, I realized I'm like, crap, like when I get to that level of blacking out, I'm basically useless the next day, and I'm not recovering as
mm,
fast as I used to. I really lose that day. I really didn't like that. So I started like just observing these like little feedback loops in life. I'm like, okay, when I do this, this actually hurts me. How can I minimize that or eliminate that? You know, and things started shifting more. Now, fast forward a little bit, and by the way, I'm not perfect by any means. I remember like by how old was that at the point? I think it was 32, 33. We had our kid. Our first, we only had one kid. We had our kid. And I was in like I was in a new role. I was in a grind mode. So I'm like traveling nonstop. I'm in a hotel room 100 plus nights a year. And married now, life's going good. Everything looks great on surface, right? And I was building my next level of my career. But I was working a lot for sure. And even when the kid came, I was like, this is me. Like I told myself I'm working really hard for my family. So even though I'm gone like all the time, like I'm in a hotel room 100 nights a year, I do it for my family. Now, again, it's a different season in my life, right? And, I didn't really think much about it until probably about my kids were probably about 1 year old or so, where some guilt started setting in. So, like, my kid, like, turned out had a lot of food allergies. So, like, my wife would call me or text me. I'm in, like, I'm like one flight away somewhere else. And she's like, hey, I'm headed to the ER because, our kid just broke out in hives. We don't know why. And here I feel this enormous guilt because I'm like, okay, like I gotta get a flight to get back there. And she's like, no, I got this. But I'm like, okay, there's so much pressure on just her that I wasn't showing up as a good husband, right? So this is a feedback loop. When I realized that, I'm like, okay, wow, like I need to like change my situation. How can I show up better, right? So it's I'm like, okay, well, what can I do when I'm in town? Like I'm gonna be best dad ever, right? Best husband ever, right? I'm just gonna show up and just do it, and that can help kind of minimize it, right? But eventually, fast forward a few years, I also realized I'm like, man, like if I really want to intentionally design my life, like I'm going to have to probably shift opportunity vehicles. And that's when I started my own business, a few years later, right? Because I had far more control of my time. Obviously, it's still a lot of work and it's hard in a different way, but I had more control on my schedule. So I share that with you because sometimes people see like, oh, this is like, oh, you just seem to have it all together. I don't. I think we go through like seasons in our lives of doing whatever's going on. And hopefully, if we pay close enough attention, we can observe some of the feedback that's being told to us from how we're feeling, how we're showing up to how, people that's important is showing or how they're kind of respond to us. And then hopefully we can make some changes to, change the behaviors we're doing to create a better life that's going to serve you more than just kind of showing up and suddenly waking up 10 years down the road, like, what happened in my life?
No, that's very inspiring. Yeah, it's what I got from that is like noticing the feedback loops, right? I think so sometimes we're laser focus mode and we're just getting after it, but it is important to take a step back and reflect and different seasons. Yeah, that's so it seems like a lot of my coaching clients, like they're going through a difficult season of, I guess Tony Robbins calls it like the winter seasons, where it just, the salaries aren't as high, you're not like closing multi-million dollars deals like as easily, like everything, it's a battle, right, to really get deals. Um, like how do you manage like those seasons? With the perspective. I mean, it sounds like you have perspective, right? But folks that are maybe a little bit more junior in their career that haven't maybe weathered as many recessions, like what type of advice would you give them?
Well, I think one of the most important things you can do is change how you perceive things, right? And the term you use perspective, you're absolutely right. And I have found, when I look back in the toughest times in my life, I realized, especially now at this point, the toughest times is always when I grew the most, I've learned the most, and became the best version of me, right? And if you're going through a tough time right now, it's important to understand this, like, I'm sure it's like you've had hard things than just sales. Sales hard for sure, but there are way hard things out there, right? But you have also survived every single worst day possible to this point still. Like if you're present in this moment, you realize that's a point, right?
Mm.
Now, the second thing is learning how to reprogram your mind and ask yourself better questions. So one of the things I learned early on, this is from Tony Robbins, was if you don't like the answer, ask a better question. So what I realized, especially in my first session I was selling through, which was 2007, when I would lose a deal or just get someone to yell at me on a cold call or just get ghosted or something bad would happen to me, I would naturally start asking myself questions like, oh man, like what's wrong with that prospect? Why is this so hard? What's wrong with the market? Why is the economy
Mm,
so hard? Why are we charging this price when it's so expensive? Why don't we have better options? Why is the competitor
mm,
better? Why do they have better marketing? Why isn't my boss supporting me? Why is my boss training me? Why is my quota so high? And naturally, whenever you ask these questions, your brain's like, well, they tell you negative things like, well, the quota's high because it's
mm,
unrealistic. Your boss isn't training because he's terrible. He's a POS.
mm,
You're gonna fail in sales. And what happens is once you have one of those questions, your brain
mm,
starts to answer it, and it's never positive or very rarely positive. And then once one of those negative thoughts crawls in your mind, more start following it. So I call it those automatic negative thoughts. So now you're like, oh my God, like now you have one ant in your head, automatic negative thought, and then another one crawls in. Before you know it, you have an infestation in your brain of how you're second guessing yourself and wondering if you're made for sales and maybe you should go into marketing instead, right? So
mm,
if you understand to be true, then hopefully the point of realization is, okay, the linchpin is a question I get asked. How can I reframe better questions? So I
mm,
remember when I was struggling early on, even to this day, I still use the same framework to this day, same principle, if you will, which is, okay, like, let me ask myself a better question. So for example, something bad happens. Hey, what can I learn from this? Hmm. What would be a better solution? Who might know the answer to the solution? Who's winning right now that I can learn from?
mm,
When you start asking yourself questions like that, you're like, interesting. This makes me think a little bit different. Okay, if I wanted to 10x my results, what would I do instead? Who might know the answer to this? Now, your brain might still be like, oh, I don't know. Okay, if I did know the answer, what would that look like?
mm,
If I look at the best version of myself 10 years down there who's already achieved everything I've already achieved at this point, what would they tell me at this point? What would they do instead? So when
mm,
you start to ask yourself questions like that, they're far more empowering. So, like, I'll give you a really simple example. So, especially in 2007, I'm trying to learn how to cold call. I never been taught how to cold call. I've never been taught a framework. I don't do a single thing, and I have all these negative thoughts. So, I had to eventually learn how to reprogram my mind, literally. And it was like I had a trigger, which was a little post-it note that was like, what can I learn from this? What could be great from
mm,
this? How can I apply this learning to the next call? And I had that post-it note right on my monitor. In fact, I also had it in my car as well, so under my visor, right? So those type of things are really, really important. Now, the other piece on top of that is oftentimes when we're focused on the scarcity and the lack, we're focused on the now. We're not focused on the future. And we
mm,
focus on the now and we feel in the scarce mindset, it causes you to go down a spiral. So that's why it's really, really important. And some people think it's cheesy, but it's really important that you're actually thinking in a longer time horizon.
mm,
So, like, for example, if I was to look at just my investments in just like, let's call it in a month time frame, you'll see some crazy spikes like this, right? And it can be kind of scary to see that. But when you look at it on like a 10-year horizon, it's just like this. And it
mm,
goes up. So
mm,
when you know it to be true, you need to have a longer time horizon. That's the same with also the goals you have in mind as well. So like for me, that's what's really, really important to always picture
mm,
like, a decade out. What does my dream ideal life look like?
mm,
I can be working towards that. Everything from, my life, my relationships, my fitness, my wealth to whatever. What does that dream life look like? And being really clear on that. Because when you are more clear on that, and forget about don't worry about the how. You just want to think of like,
mm,
what's the what? What's like my dream life going to look like? So this way you can start focusing more on that and operate in that mind space. Because that's operating in the sense of abundance versus scarcity. Because when you operate in scarcity, well, it shows up in your sales calls. It shows up in everything that you do, right?
mm,
And you don't want that. So you always want to be looking ahead a little bit. Those kind of strategies are important to have. But on top of that, with all these things, it's not enough just to do it one time, right? It's like writing down your vision for future. That's a one-time event. But how are you
mm,
consistently showing up every single day? Right? Because when you picture your ideal dream self, what you want to be like, what you need to start thinking about is like, okay, but what habits is that person going to start doing now? And you start doing those things now because whatever you do consistently now is going to create your future down the road. And they all compound over time. We just don't realize it, right?
mm,
So, like, I'll give you a really, really simple example. So, I grew up with a speech impediment for years. I could barely speak. I could barely talk. I started speaking when I was 4 years old. I went through therapy classes. People made fun of me, right? And that was just part of my life. And I remember even when I got into B2B sales, whenever I got insecure about anything, which is quite often, it would come out. I would show up as an insecure rookie rep. And of course, prospects would smell that. They would see that. And they just like, oh, look at this young buck trying to sell, you know. They treat me like I was a kid, right? And I didn't like that. And I knew the best version of myself wouldn't show up that way. Like the best version would be like the people I saw that respected, people who had great executive acumen, people who could speak clearly, concisely, well, who could tell a great story, who could articulate well, from how they from a body language to how, like, everything. It was all premeditated. And I said, okay, I want to be like that. But it wasn't overnight. So I had to do things consistently to get myself to that point. You know, for example, I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to speak better. What could I do? What you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start reading books out loud. And I'm going to over enunciate so I can work on my inflection, so I can speak with more crispness and emphasis to be able to hook executives more on a conversation with them. So stuff like that. And it wasn't overnight, but by practicing consistently, it starts building over time, right? And I share that with you. And if I didn't have that future vision, I wouldn't have done that early on. I'm like, this is so stupid. Why am I reading the book out loud for 10 minutes a night? But I look back now, it's also paid me dividends. And now I get the pleasure and privilege of coming on podcasts. I can speak on stages. People pay me a lot of money to speak on stages now, which is kind of crazy for me to think about. Because at one point, I was 4 years old getting made fun of for not being old tough.
Davidson, can I jump in real quick? Because I want to
Of
double
course.
click. So, Marcus, a big theme that I'm gathering from you is you did a lot of self-discovery, like asking yourself great discovery questions on where you're at now, where you want to be, how you can get there, but focusing more on the what before the how. My question is, once you shape that up and understand the what, how did you kind of understand like what levers to pull that were most important in terms of how to get to that what? So for instance, you talked about improving your public speaking and you knew that a step that you could take was reading books out loud. Like sometimes for me, I get caught up in all the different how pieces that I could take that I don't actually do anything. So how did you kind of break out of that?
Great question. And I appreciate you asking. And I'm probably pretty stupid and pretty simple. That's how I kind of think. So whenever I look at like a big goal like that, to me it was very daunting because I had to become someone that I just simply wasn't. So I'm like, okay, what can I do? And I've also kind of grew up with kind of, I hate to say kind of a grind mindset, just like putting the work in. I'm like, well, I've never been good at anything really, but I've realized I work hard at something specifically, consistently, I will get better. I may not be the best, but I will get better. So I knew, for example, just even simply just reading every day for a little bit, I'm like, okay, this could help. And I think I literally read that in a book somewhere. like I would like kind of pick a couple small things, like, well, I don't need anything crazy, you know, but I'm like, I can commit to this. I can commit to like reading out loud every single day. To me, that was a very easy micro milestone. That felt it was very, very easy. And then what was interesting was as I kind of progressed and even learning how to speak better, I'm like, okay, what are other ways I could practice it? Like, well, you know, the reality is it's actually kind of scary to do public speaking. Because I remember like, you know, in college, we had group presentations and I'd be so scared, so nervous. I'll like try to memorize the whole speech and I would have like all these note cards and like I'll have them ready and I'd be shaking the whole time. I'm like, I'm gonna have to put myself into like outside my comfort zone. Again, I'm pretty sure I probably read this in a book, which is like, hey, you need to like join a Toastmasters or like, you know, join like a public speaking forum. Well, I'm like, I really don't want to do that, but I'm like, well, what could I do? You know, like we have a team meeting. I could like just speak up more. You know, like I could like just share. It's like instead of just being quiet, you know, a quiet little Asian Marcus, I could share ideas. I could bring insight. I could do whatever. So it gave me the opportunity. But then I would do these things that would challenge me. So I'll be like, okay, you know, what make me really uncomfortable, make me better is if I taught the group something. So like, okay, if I'm having success, can I go to my boss and say, let me, like, would you be okay if I teach a team how I handle objections? Like, I'll prepare a presentation, I'll prepare the training. Oh, can you let me do that? And yeah, I was super nervous doing it, and I would spend all this time practicing it. But what was happening was I was building that muscle memory. But the other piece is confidence is built through doing the hard things. So regardless of how you feel. So I'm like, okay, like this is good. This is gonna make me really uncomfortable. So I'm gonna over practice, which made me better. But then because I did it, increased my confidence. So now I get to say, hey, how about this next week I presented this. So again, I was curating the environment to force myself out of my comfort zone. So those are things that's really important because again, no one's gonna do it for you. And if you keep doing what you're currently doing, then nothing's gonna change. But if you can create the circumstances for change, then it's amazing what ends up happening when you do stuff like that.
That was great. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, that good stuff, man. I mean, dude, it's almost funny. It's funny because you make it seem kind of easy, but it's like everyone that has been in the game knows how much work you've done, right? So it's almost like it's interesting because, but I like how you're able to break it down, right? So it's like a lot more systematic. It seems like you put a lot into like process and systems that have helped you be able to obviously accomplish more and achieve more. How does one think about like maybe building a system doesn't come naturally to us, right? Like, do you really sit down and you do deep work and you're like, all right, let me like block off and like turn off my phone and like sit down and like really think about everything? Like, how do you go about coming up with frameworks and systems that work for you?
Well, I think the first piece is, and this didn't happen overnight, but you have to build a system in place to create self-awareness. And most people don't create that system. And what I mean by that is, like most of us, myself included, guilty of this. We run so hard, and before we're like, oh my God, the month's over, the quarter's over, the year's over. Wow, it flew by, and we're not even close to where we want to be at. And we miss all the signs that are in our face, but we don't really pay close enough attention to it because we're just running gunning so hard.
Hmm.
And I realized, especially early on, like for example, like actually, like early on, I would like set an annual goal. And then I like, December like 25th, I write my annual goal right before the upcoming year. And then suddenly before I know, it's like November next year. I'm like, what? What was my goal again? I'm not even close to it. Very normal. And I realized I didn't really have a good type feedback loop. So what I started doing, and this kind of built over time, is I started to incorporate things in my life that allowed me to reflect consistently. So I could reflect on where I am, my biggest challenges, and where I want to go, and potential solutions to kind of think through these things. So, for example, to give you some, get super granular, like every night, I literally journal and write it out. I write out, what decisions did I make today to help me drive to my better self? What am I grateful for? What's one thing I can learn from today? How do I feel about the day? What's my number one focus for tomorrow? So every single day, I just take 5 minutes and I just journal it out. And it's amazing. This helps us like build it. Now, this is very short, only 5 minutes, very, very simple, right? Then at the end of the week, I was called a protected hour. So it's a 1 hour block on my calendar. My EA knows to not book anything during that time. And during that time, I'm reflecting on the entire week. I'm looking at the whole week. I'm looking at my notes from my journal. And I'm looking what gave me energy, what drained my energy. I'm also looking at what decisions I make that week and what's the potential outcomes I'm hoping to come from those decisions. What are the biggest bottlenecks to the business? What would I do right now to fix those bottlenecks? What's my number one focus for next week? So this one's really, really key because this allows me to, again, have a very tight feedback loop, all right? And then on a monthly basis, it's the same thing. I forget even deeper level. And I go super granular into all the metrics I'm looking at. And what do I want to start doing, stop doing, continue doing to do? And then on a quarterly basis, it's the same thing. Same thing. And I'm just taking time. I'm forcing myself to reflect. It's in my calendar. It's automatic. So I know to do it during this time. I need to do these things. So when you start thinking this way, what ends up happening is you get super clear, hopefully, on what your goals are and what you're optimizing for, and what you have to do now to change the future. The mistake a lot of people make is too much time goes by and they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm deep down a hole now. What have I done? So, and what happens is when you also force yourself to be alone with your thoughts and not be distracted with social media, your phone, or anything else, is it forces you to look in the mirror. And that can be very painful for a lot of people to have to sit and soak in the pain. When you have to sit and soak in the pain, it's like Even if you're like, oh man, like I'm blaming the world. I didn't do that Tony Robbins exercise Marcus mentioned. The world's the worst. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Well, now you sit in the pain, like, so yeah, okay, but now what? All those might be true regardless, but now what?
Hmm.
You know, so that's how I started thinking, because then from there, because of these awareness like blocks I force myself to do, this helps me realize, okay, what am I going to optimize for? What's the problem? What's a big problem right now? What am I really optimizing for? And then I can make decisions based off that. So whatever system needs to be built, you know, this is really important. So I'll give a really simple example. So a few weeks ago, I was getting frustrated with my team because the thumbnails were not looking as good as I wanted on YouTube. Kind of a small thing, but I'm like, oh, this is so annoying. Like, I feel like I keep telling them the same thing. Then I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, have I really done a good job, like really building a checklist for them so they know exactly what to follow for a thumbnail? No, I haven't. Okay, what system could I build now so each time when they create a thumbnail, it's going to be most likely to get the goal I want? I'm like, well, you know what? I already use ClickUp to manage the whole process, or my team that uses ClickUp to manage the whole process. You know what I need to do? I need a really simple system. I simply need to have a checklist for the world-class thumbnail that my EA can review and compare to what they're doing. Oh, and guess what? Now thumbnails are way better. You know, like anytime there's a problem or something you're frustrated with, is potentially an opportunity to build some sort of system to limit that frustration.
Yeah, I mean, it's you have a lot of really good so I'm curious, like obviously this took time. Are you very careful about who, like the information diet, and like who you follow, and like do you unfollow like people that, maybe it sounds like drains your energy? Like how do you think about that in general? Like is it like only Tony Robbins and those types of people? I'm curious.
Oh, good question. So I actually do very little social media, which is as crazy as it sounds. So like even like LinkedIn, which is like I'm on there a lot, or even like YouTube, I use a tool called Newsfeed Eradicator. It blocks my whole feed. So like I use those tools because I use them to build my business. So my goal is to be, I hate to use the term a creator, but I'm there for business. I'm much rather be a creator than a consumer of that information. Now, it doesn't mean I don't like follow people or like read some of their stuff, but it's I curate, so when I want to go look at their stuff, I'll look at their stuff. So for example, like I might have certain notifications. So when I go on that platform, I say, okay, say, oh cool, here's people, I'm going to go check out what they're doing. And I'll engage in their post. I like their stuff, right? But it's intentional design of what I want to actually consume. Now, before this, when I didn't do this, I would find myself spending at least a few hours a day minimum, just like reading whatever content online or on Instagram or whatever. Again, like just down like a rabbit hole. And part of it is, like the algorithm's going to feed you what they think is going to keep you on there. So sometimes this would help me, sometimes it would hurt me. Most of the time, I walked away not feeling great, especially like Instagram. I'm like, man, like why is everyone so rich, so good looking, have the perfect families on Instagram? Like, how's this possible? And I'm like, and when you realize that, it's like, okay, that's a feedback loop. What can I do to control it? So then I put constraints in place so I don't get like sucked into it. All right. And if it's really negative people, if it's consistently negative, I'll remove them. For the most part, it's pretty well curated. So like, if I like, lose control, I'll go down Instagram for a little bit. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, I like reading, I like Alex Hormozi's stuff. I think it's interesting, right? I think he's got good insights. I like his wife. Okay, that's fine. I like Tony Robbins. That's fine. If there's anything that's not really serving me, I'll remove. Now, I think there's a good balance as well, because you can't be a robot. So like, I'll fall to like corporate bro. He's just funny. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm like, having some humor, having some fun is totally fine, as long as it's controlled. And of course, I put restraints in place, like app limits, the 1 sec timer, so it minimizes my consumption. So I don't do more than 1 hour a day for all platforms.
Yeah, that's pretty disciplined, right? But it's clear that you're setting up ways to win, right? It's like, if anyone, I wouldn't say most people, if they follow your regimen, if they follow your discipline, they'll have some success, right? It's almost like you're setting yourself up to not lose, right?
The key is, how do you curate the world so like you can be more successful? I'll give you a really simple example. So this is like, I remember being like, have more success in my sales career. And we had a phone block session from 8 to 12 on a Monday. Team comes in. We're also get on the phone and basically be calling from 8 to 12. We take it'd be like 15 minutes on, 10-minute break. And what I found most people, what they do, they get there right before 8. 8 o'clock hits, they go get a cup of coffee, open up the laptop, or do some research, pull the list up. And their first call might not be till like 9:30, 10. And what I realized was like there was just like a lot of like friction in what they were doing. And this is what I did instead. I found my actually earlier, I did the same thing. I'm like, this is what you're supposed to do, right? But then I'm like, my God, like, by the time I make any calls, it's like I'm like 2 hours in. What a waste of time. I'm like, I didn't do anything productive. I basically wasted my time. Or people do admin during that time, which is another huge mistake. So I'm like, okay, how could I curate a better design? Okay, number one, on Friday afternoons, I would do my admin before I left. Number two, I made sure my list was properly prepared to research and vetted out and ready to go, right? So it's all preset already, okay? Like number three, all right, come Sunday night, I literally just opened everything up, ready to go, and have my laptop ready to go charge. Everything was good to go. Number four, once I got to the office early, right? Got office early. I docked up. I got my coffee. I got my water. I went to the bathroom. I did all the things that I knew would distract me in that block. And then 8 o'clock hits. My head's already on. I'm already calling. 8 o'clock, I'm already pushing go. And all I did was remove the friction. I didn't have to pull up my CRM. I did it all before. So I was forcing the situation. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, most people need to warm up as well. So that first call is the hardest call, right? It's like the hardest call, first 10 calls. On my drive to the office, I'll role play out loud those 10 calls. I would role play the worst possible situations of getting 4, 5, 6, 7 no's. And how would I deal with all of them? And I'm getting my brain mapped out to get me ready to go. I'm getting my vocals warmed up. I'm getting my body in state. Because I know once I sit down at 8 o'clock, I stood actually. Once I stood at 8 o'clock at my desk, I'm going. Because I knew it would give me a 90-minute advantage over my peers. So we start thinking this way, it's like, how can I curate for success? It's no different. It's kind of like if you want to work out in the morning, but you struggle like, getting your stuff and going to the gym, do all that stuff. Well, hey, sleep in your workout clothes. Okay, roll out of bed, you ready to go. Have your workout stuff ready to rock. So you want to, all I'm doing, basically, I'm minimizing friction to the hard thing I want to do. And the things I get pulled in by dopamine hits, I create friction to make it harder to do those things. That's the key. It's just habit creation. It's all it is.
Thank you for that.
Oh,
Charlie,
sorry, David. I had a tactical question on that, just to go a little deeper. So for me, I've always heard like eat the frog first, which is kind of what I hear you saying as well. But I also understand. So for me, I really like to make cold calls for whatever reason. And I know that like it gives you that advantage, like you said, to start your day at 8 a.m. just ripping out the dials. So I recognize that. But since it's not my frog, I'm having a tough time reconciling, like, should I start the day with that and get ahead and like make those dials, or should I be constructing my day around like the things I don't like to do, which are like creating a POV on accounts and like multi-threading stuck ops to progress them down funnel. Like those are the things that suck my energy more. So I want to get them done first, but I also don't want to sacrifice like the call blocks first thing in the morning. So I'd be curious, Marcus, like how you would operationalize that.
My answer is gonna I'm gonna give you a framework to think it through. So it'll apply for you in this role, but if your role changes, you can apply the same concept, which is what's the highest leverage thing you can do first? Like if you were to take a look at your time, like what's your worth per an hour? Like is cold calling, what's that dollar worth to you per an hour versus a POV versus XYZ? And whatever's highest leverage is what you should focus on first, right? So it doesn't mean you don't cold call, but you also know, like, I'm making an example. Let's say if like crafting a really good POV for a $2 million deal that takes some deep mental work and thought, is going to help you show up better for that call you have on Tuesday. You're like, well, that's a pretty high leverage activity because like if you leverage it right, it's going to make you far more money as a result. But the key is not tell yourself a logical lie because some people get really busy. They're like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? Like I'm gonna get really organized in my CRM, so I'm gonna do that first thing. That's like administrative stuff. So like being really clear on what's that value, that task, right? So if you can ideally do that first thing, that is a far better way of thinking, right? But generally speaking, I find the deep work is also one of the hardest things to get started with because you're like, okay, I gotta sit, create from scratch. It might take a little bit of work. So that's where you want to kind of think it through in terms of like what's your highest leverage, the highest value. But then on top of that, also prospecting is important as well. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna make sure so built into my day. But the key is before you walk into the day, you pre-plan your whole day out. So you know exactly what you're gonna do. So that way you don't make any decisions on the spot. So for example, I walked into today and I already had pre-planned out what I was gonna do all day. Right. So any blank spaces was already pre-filled on the specific things I'm gonna do that day to make it a great Monday. So then it's very simple. The strategy is very simple. At the end of each day, I plan the next day. That's all I do. If I do it consistently, each day I wake up, I don't have to think. I just simply execute based off the lens I'm looking through. What do you do right?
So it sounds like what you're saying is it's not necessarily do the like hardest thing for you first. It's do the highest lever activity first,
Correct.
which is the closest thing to making you money, basically, which for me, I think would be calling. So start with that, but then maybe it's like, okay, on a one day, I'm going to block off like that morning to get it all done for the whole week. So I'm prepared to like do that or something.
You're exactly right. Because sometimes the hard thing it shifts depending on the role you're in. Like it really varies. It's like the hard thing doesn't always necessarily mean the highest leverage. So it's like, okay, like a hard thing is also like, okay, I'm gonna go and like, I don't know, clean out my garage. It's really hard. I don't want to like, yeah, I can go do that, but it's not really high leverage. It's about priorities and what is the highest leverage activity you can do.
Love that. Thank you.
Got it.
Quick question. Someone from the live stream, Aniket Sharma, asks, do you have any suggestions for teenagers?
For which part?
So I think he's studying to get his like CPA license.
Okay.
So yeah, he I guess he just took his exam and he scored pretty high. So I guess the next stage is like university.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna give general advice because obviously you gotta decide what's best for you. The cool part is as a teenager, the gift you have is time. Like that's just the gift you have. And I wish I'm gonna give you advice I wish I knew early on, which is for the next decade or so, like use it as mass experimentation. Like work on hacking, improve, just try types of new things, new experiment, push yourself because the more you can test yourself and build your skills and confidence and just like try new things and reinventing yourself, number one, you might find a better opportunity vehicle potentially, right? Or you might find what you absolutely love to do, you want to keep doing, which is totally cool too. So that's what's really key. I wish I probably experimented more early on. And it obviously worked out for me because I stuck with one path for sales, kind of worked out. But it's not always good for a lot of people. I think a lot of people end up kind of like, I was told to be this and they didn't want to do this, right? Like, for example, I was told to be an architect and I didn't do that, obviously. I dropped out of architecture school, but I had to figure out what I wanted to do, right? And I probably didn't experiment as much as I could have. But I think if I did that early on, that would help me even more today than, my life ended up being like.
That's really good advice. Appreciate that. So June or Adam Adam, I think you said you had some questions for Marcus.
Oh yeah, I always have questions. Hey Marcus, thanks for doing this, by the way. So I have a question that's more on the mental state. It's around the concept of emotional energy. And basically, I've realized more and more that time is limited, but everyone has the same time. But there's a lot of, I'm looking to become an entrepreneur, and my biggest struggle is not with the time. I'm happy to put in the time. I'm happy to carve out time, and I'm pretty good at doing that. But what ultimately happens to me a lot is I'll sit down and I'm just exhausted, whether it's from the workday or from something else, or an emotional event, whatever. I just don't feel like I have the emotional energy to commit to doing something else. And I think that's also related to ADHD. So I'm wondering, do you have things that you use to kind of cultivate your emotional energy, to kind of gear yourself up to do tasks that are difficult, to sit down for long periods of time and do deep work?
Yeah, so it's a great question because I think a lot of people, you're not alone, by the way. I think a lot of people struggle with this. So I think the first piece to understand is being really clear on what actually gives and drains your emotional energy. That's probably the first thing. If you're not really clear on what gives and drains your energy, then that makes it really, really hard. So I think being really clear on that's really important. So like, for example, like, depending if you're an ambivert, introvert, extrovert, different tasks in your day may just impact you differently, right? So like being really clear, like on like, okay, what gives me energy and is also super high leverage, and how can I spend more time doing that? And the things that drain my energy, how can I eliminate, remove, or potentially even delegate that? So that's really, really important. So I'll give you a really simple example. So what gives me a lot of energy is like sales, marketing, working with clients. I love it. It fills my bucket. What drains my energy is the tech stuff, like building some of the actual tech and software, put things together, funnels and automation. Also, like I can do it, but I'm like, man, like it's just like not my strong suit. So I did it for a long time, for at least 2 years, 2.5 years. And then eventually I'm like, I gotta hire someone. And then once I hired them, it was like a brain unlock. Because now I'm like, okay, I can focus on my highest level, always like the creation of things that I want to get done. I can build it all out, and I can send it to my tech guy to do. So for example, like right now we're in the process of redoing my website. And I'm like, okay, I can spend a lot of time like mapping it out, building it out in Figma, exactly how I want to kind of look, the copy and all that stuff. But the actual technical part now, once I'm done, I can say, hey, Jay, here you go. Please make this. And it's amazing for me. I think it's the first thing, is uncovering what gives you emotional energy, what drains your energy, and doing more things that give you energy, and then eliminating things that basically hurt you, right? Now, I also think as well, emotional energy is directly correlated to a lot of other parts of your life too, right? So from like your mental energy to your physical energy to your spiritual energy as well. So there's always a correlation. So like, what are things you can do that's going to fill those other buckets too? That's going to help raise your emotional energy game. So for example, I know me personally, from the physical bucket perspective, it's really important for me to either eat healthy, eat clean, to work out, get exercise. Because I know when I do those things, I have more emotional energy. But when I don't do the thing, like if I eat like a really heavy meal, suddenly I physically feel tired, and emotionally I'm even more tired. So understanding these other buckets and doing things consistently that fills other buckets is really important. For example, I realized before I would scroll social media, it would depress me. And when I didn't feel good, my emotional energy also went down too. So if I'm doing a bunch of like things like tech build outs, and then I'm like looking at Instagram and see how everyone's so much more successful than I am, I'm comparing myself. Before I know, I'm like, I don't want to do any of this. I'm just going to give up. So when I realized they're all connected, I'm like, okay, what can I do to curate that and design that environment, right? To raise the game for myself, and then also eliminate the bad stuff and add more of the good stuff. It's going to help me overall. All right. That's also really key. Okay. And then on top of that, what I also found as well is my willpower typically wanes. It gets worse throughout the day. Like willpower is pretty strong today, and it just goes downhill, right? So this is actually why I typically don't like to make a decision at night, because I'm more likely to make a bad decision. So it's kind of like if like early on I'm gonna eat clean all day, and then suddenly if I go to happy hour with friends, oh man, that calamari is looking good, that fried chicken is looking really good, the pizza bite looks really good. I'm just like less likely to like be more disciplined to like basically hold myself back. So part of also understanding that is when I understand that to be true, I'm like, okay, how can I, number one, map my sleep patterns so I have more energy in the morning, right? And then number two, how can I do the high level things up front that also serve me the most down the road, right? And that's what's really key to, if I understand to be true, is like trying to like do a bunch of like stuff to waste my time all day, and then at night try to work on something is very hard. It's not to say you can't do it, but it does require a lot of discipline, right? So that's why it's important to kind of curate that environment, and then hopefully structure your day so you can do most of like the willpower stuff that you really need that's going to be the highest leverage early on. So this way you can kind of keep going all the way through. Now, on top of that, I think it's also key to incorporate, understand where your energy levels come from. For example, my wife has more energy at night, and I'm the inverse. I'm more energy in the morning. So I kind of share like what kind of works overall for me, but you might be the inverse. So understand like, all right, like where's my energy is strong, where's my willpower energy that's strongest? Like my wife is very creative. She's like middle of the night, boom. She's got insight. She might pull an all-nighter with the insight. I'm not that way. I'm like, I need to be in bed by like 9:30, 10. Like that's not I'm gonna be up in the morning. So understand kind of how you kind of flow, kind of type feedback is also important too for helping manage your energy too. So hopefully that makes sense.
That does. Thank you. I think I'm going to start by recognizing I don't know off the bat what, like, I have an idea, but I don't know for sure what drains and gives me energy. So sounds like I really need to sit down and think about that and start mapping out activities to do in the morning when I also, like you, work the best. Thank you.
Yeah, what else is one last thing before the next question? A really simple, easy way you kind of do is each, like, number one, hopefully you kind of reflect what you're already doing, but every day you can just, if you just journal, what gave me energy today? What remove my energy? If you do that every day for like 2 weeks, you'll have some really good data. You should obviously take all the data, throw it in ChatGPT, but hey, to help summarize after these 14 days, what were the specific things that drained my energy the most and what gave me most energy? And this way you have some data.
What if writing drains my energy? No, I'm just kidding. I know it has to be done. That's huge. Thank you for that. I'll do that.
Then verbalize it. Whatever it takes, just like verbalize it. Do a voice memo, translate it. Find a way to get it
That
done.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
One more question, then Sebastian, you could do yours. Someone from the live stream, Rohan, he's like a trader from India. He says, what was your thinking before you became a millionaire, and what is it now that you've become a millionaire? What shifted?
The thinking before, because I hit millionaire status by 30. The first thing was, well, first off, my thinking before was like, how I want to phrase this. I know it's possible, right? That's what it was. It was like early on, like I know I can get there. I just didn't know how or when, right? This was like early on, I think I'm 21, 22. I'm like, I know I can get there. So I think it was important. Just like having that belief system is really, really important. But also, I had to train myself to think that way. So, it's interesting because, when I grew up really poor, right, with no money. So like, I had a lot of money mindset beliefs that are kind of false that I kind of shift. So I started reading a lot of books and trying to spend time with people who are just like super successful and wealthy. And that was really important to help me retrain my mind and help me like realize, like think differently about money. That was probably the first piece. And I remember reading some books, by the way, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So I'll give you an example. So like one of the books, I can't remember the book, but this guy's like, hey, like you need to focus on high leverage activities and like low leverage tasks. You need to pay someone to do. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't have any money. Like, for example, they're like, hey, like if you know if you're in sales, you can go and you can close a deal, make $1,000 commission an hour. And if you are still cutting your own grass, and you can hire someone for like $10 an hour to do, if you're cutting your own grass, you're costing yourself $1,000 an hour. I didn't mentally understand that early on until I started realizing, like, oh my God, this is how rich people think. So I felt like a poor person, and that was really bad. So learning how to shift those beliefs to the point like I can make this happen is really important. The second thing, once I actually hit that status, what I realized was it's not very much money. It's really not that much. Like, like you really, depending on your age and your goals and your monthly burn, you have to really kind of map out how much you actually need. Like, there's no way I could leave corporate America with $1 million net worth. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I mean, I could do it, but like, I would still be very stressed, because the draw you take, even at 4% is not going to be enough, right? So like, you have to like, I really quick up, I'm like, man, this is very small potatoes. Like, it's like, I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but you have to like start realizing, like, man, like when you meet people who are doing way more than that, it's like different. People that are, who have a net worth of like 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion plus. It's just a completely different like way of thinking. So I realized that at that point, I'm like, huh. And what's powerful is it's actually very humbling. It's very humbling. It's like, yeah, that's not that great, Marcus. At that point, I'm like, my life didn't change drastically. It was still like, I was still pretty frugal. I'm like, all right, you know what? Like, it's time to move to the next level. All right. So it's important to understand. Like, I think it's like, it's when you hit that point, there's nothing crazy about it. There's not like there's no fireworks going off. There's nothing wild. You're just like, huh, just another day. Still doing my thing. Still have the same habits, same everything else, right? But then if you want to get to the next level, I also start realizing I'd become a different person. So at every new level, there is a new devil. So you start realizing, huh, like if I want to get to that level, I need to do this. I need to become this person. I need to shift what I do here. You know, so one of the things I've always struggled with is like being okay with the risk. And as an entrepreneur, you have to be very okay with the risk. So like stuff like that, it's like that just took me a while to kind of break into. But good question though. Yeah.
Thank you, Marcus. So Sebastian had a question. Sebastian, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. My question was like if you have a document or a framework for how you go about setting your goals and more importantly executing them, and then sort of as a part two, what you were just talking about with ChatGPT, how you use that or any kind of your favorite GPT to make yourself more effective.
Yeah, so multi-part question. So I use a really simple framework for goal setting. I call MSTW, right? So it's gotta be it's based kind of I don't like SMART goals because I think it should be realistic. So it should be measurable. It should be very specific. It's gotta be time bound, and you have to know why you want to do it. It's very important. So measurable, specific, time bound, and why you want to do it. That's a very simple framework. So like, let's just say, for example, if your goal is to, let's just say you want to like, I don't know, get like super cut, or I'm just making an example of, you want to get down to like 8% body fat. Like, okay, cool. Like, I want to get down to 8% body fat by December. And I want to have at least an I don't know, like I want to be able to bench, whatever amount, 200 pounds, 20 times, whatever. The reason I want to do it is because it doesn't have, and by the way, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, it'll give me a sense of accomplishment of setting a goal, making it happen. All right, that's cool. Or it could be like, I want to attract a better partner. Whatever, doesn't matter. It's your why, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't what other people think. So that's a very simple framework. Now, that's like setting the goals, right? But then I do a modification of the 12-week year. So I mix the entrepreneur operating system with the 12-week year, same kind of concept where every quarter I'll set quarterly goals, identify 3 big focuses or rocks I want to move, and then each big rock is going to have different subtasks below of what I would need to do to get to that point. And then there's deadlines for all those tasks. And then every single week, those are my biggest focuses, because I know if I focus on those small tasks that lead to the big rocks, it's going to lead to the big goals for the quarter, right? And it's part of the whole reflection process. So it's been very consistent with that, all right? So that's how I kind of utilize kind of goal setting, kind of that framework. Now, how do I utilize like say ChatGPT to become more effective? It depends on what it is, right? But like for example, in the spirit of performance management, I'll utilize a ChatGPT to actually analyze my data. So for example here, like, I actually just did it yesterday. So every single day, I actually track different parts of my life. So I have this like life tracker where I have something called the M5, which measures like specific parts of, my life. And then, activity, my sleep scores, my REM sleep, etc., notes as well. And then I take notes in an app called Day One. So I can export all that data, all the things I mentioned before, the daily stuff, the weekly stuff, the quarterly and annual I put somewhere else, but my daily and weekly reflections are all inside there because it's very granular. So I can export all that data into a PDF. I could take that Google sheet with all the data points for the last month with averages and all my notes. I can export that to a CSV file. I could take both those pieces of data. I could throw in a ChatGPT and then give like a very specific prompt. Like, I think the prompt I used, it used kind of this frame, which is like, act as a type of coach, right? So for example, what I did was like, act as if you are Wendy Rhodes, Tony Robbins, and Dan Sullivan, and you're a high performance coach for business and life. I'm going to provide for you the two data sets. I want you to analyze the data sets and provide me a few things. Number one, provide me an overall analysis summary of what you uncover based on the analyzing data. Number two, I want you to break down in categories what are the things I should start doing, stop doing, and continue doing if I want to 10x results. Be very direct and be very blunt. Please structure it this way. Boom. So now it takes all the data and it frames it up for me. So I can see very quickly, I'm like, oh man, actually, I didn't think about that. That's a good point. So and it takes a little bit of time to do, but the first piece is having the data to actually do it so you can actually analyze it and actually make different plans. So hopefully it makes sense. Kind of a long answer to your question, but does that make sense, Sebastian?
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. When you tried that, what did ChatGPT give you?
So a lot of different things, right? Well, one of them was because like one of the challenges I've been running into is like impressions have been down overall. So like it was like, okay, in order to like and the number of impressions directly correlates to leads, to book calls, to close deals. It's always a direct correlation, right? So it was interesting because it had some different ideas. All right, here's some different ideas you could do. I'm like, okay, like lead gen agency, not into that. I'm not into that, right? Partnerships and sponsorship, already negotiate some in place, right? So it's kind of good validation there. Anything else that was different or unique? It was like, oh, we should hire more people. They're like, you're doing some things that are too low value for your time. I'm like, ah, dang it, I knew it. One thing was actually very insightful was just like everybody else, I get shiny thing syndrome. They're like, you're trying too many things. You need to do less things and be more focused. I'm like, they totally called me out. Like I knew it. And sometimes the best advice is true, not new. And that was a really good reminder of like, wow, you know what? I just got called about ChatGPT 100% wrong. What can I remove now to be more focused?
Cool.
Cool.
I want to be mindful. I think you have a hard stop at this time, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. I'll post a link to your LinkedIn, your website, and all that. Is there any other ways, last minute things you want to say?
No, it's been a pleasure being on, and just be aware, like anything I shared today, it might be like, oh man, this guy's kind of like crazy and systematic and robotic. Just remember, like my own development journey has been almost 2 decades in the making. So like some of these things I mentioned now, and the ways that the mental models I kind of talk through and process through, it's not how I started when I first got started. I started by picking like, hey, listen to something like this. If I can just get like one single nugget, okay, write it down. How can I apply this like right now? If you think of it that way, I think you'll have a far greater success or chance of being able to implement whatever you learn to get the greatest results. So it's not about trying to implement everything, but can you pull one thing from today's conversation and start doing it ASAP? And if you can do that consistently, you'll see results start going skyrocketing. And of course, you can add more stuff over time as those things become new habits.
Well said. Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you, Marcus.
Cool. All right. See you all later. Bye.
Thanks, Marcus.
See ya. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Any feedback, Adam and Sebastian? Did you guys think it was useful? Was it helpful?
Yeah, I found this really helpful, especially the piece on emotional energy, which I don't think is talked about that much. Like we always talk about time, but like I can have 10 hours to work with, but if I can't devote time to like my energy to work, can't get work done. So been kind of looking into that, and that was really helpful. Thank you.
Good stuff. What about you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I have to read through his 5M, the M5 thing.
Oh yeah. I'll send that over. Yeah, he sent it up. He presented on that in the workshop at Ian's like retreat in California. So yeah, I think they sent something over. So I'll send that over to you.
Okay, cool. But yeah, he's very like data driven, which is like
Yeah.
in a pretty crazy way that most people don't do. So it'd be kind of
Yeah.
interesting to adapt some of those methods.
Oh yeah. I mean he only went slightly into it, but he's even more like,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
it's pretty insane. But there's a reason why he's, successful, right? And it's certainly not by accident. So
Yeah.
cool. Well, yeah, I'm glad you guys found it to be helpful. Yeah, we'll continue. Just for context, so the next guest we have on is because next Monday, I just realized like 2 Mondays from now, because this will be like every 2 weeks, right? Is going to be Memorial Day, so I know, so that's going to be tough. So we're going to do it the following Monday, and it's with Dwight Lawson, who's like he was head of sales at Athena, which is like a compliance software company, and he's gonna teach us on negotiation because like he says that's like a very useful skill, and yeah, he has a lot of thoughts on that. So and he's a part of like a lot of other sales communities, and so that should be a good one if you guys can make it. It's 8:30 Eastern time on June 3rd. But yeah, I think you guys all have the invite to that, but
Sweet.
check that out. And yeah, if you guys can make it next Monday, I have another training. So it'll be around some of the like frameworks around like self-development stuff. So
Is there
yeah.
a thing? Is there one tonight too from 9 to 10?
Oh no, that shouldn't happen. Why, is there still on your calendar?
I still see it, but it might just
Oh,
be
okay.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can do one if you guys there's always like a ton of training. So if you guys have time, so actually let me poll everyone. Is that too late for you guys? Like, do you prefer earlier?
8:30
Me
is
personally,
better.
yes.
8:30 was better, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 8:30.
I
Adam,
won't
is it?
I won't be I won't be there tonight, but yeah, 8:30
Okay,
is generally
but
good.
usually 8:30. Okay. And Adam?
Same situation. Won't be there tonight because I was able to attend this one. But yeah, 8:30 would
Yeah.
be better when possible.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think this was supposed to, yeah, let me delete this one actually, because it's supposed to be like one of the guest speakers and then every other week. So
Mhm.
I think I just didn't cancel it. Okay, cool. All right, guys. Well, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Take care. Bye.
You too. Thank you, Davidson. See you, brother.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.